Today we have a Grimm video. We'll see. I'm not sure how long this is going to be because I don't know where this conversation is going to take us. So grab a cup of coffee, tea, Sprite, I don't know, whatever floats your boat, and let's chat. This is going to be a chatty, introspective video because this was originally a reading experiment that was going to be a vlog, and like I just don't even like any of the footage associated with it, and so I decided instead of doing that, we're just going to do like a summary type video. So I think I've alluded to this, but not sure if you guys... Yeah, I think I've alluded to this, that I guess kind of still am, doing a project where I was trying to read a lot of the really chunky books on my TBR. So I identified, I think, 10 of them, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take like a good like month basically to try to get through these. I'll split it up over 2 different months, so like, you know, I'll still have other things I can talk about in a wrap up, but this will be great. Spoilers, reader, it was not great. And so let's talk about it. So the books that I am going to talk about that I am going to include in this, I've got, I guess, 7 of them. I've got Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. I've got Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I've got The Decline and Fall of the British Aristocracy by David Carradine. That Sweet Enemy, Britain and France, The History of a Love-Hate Relationship by Robert and Isabel Toombs. I've got A Problem from Hell, America and the Age of Genocide by Samantha Power. We've got Cold Magic by Kate Elliott. And we've got Apollo's Angels by Jennifer Humans. Humans, not humans. So we've got, you know, a lot of nonfiction in here, but, you know, a few fictional tomes as well. And what I think I was chasing with this project concept, or, trying to explore a little bit, I guess, is this lingering feeling I've had since I've been on BookTube of kind of like internalized judgment towards myself, that I've become such a consuming reader, that so much of my reading is really just consumption rather than like deep engagement or deep thoughts, because I've struggled so much since I got out of grad school to focus on anything written in visual entertainment. So like, I have no problem, for instance, I've been very into Dimension 20 recently. I have no problem with like improv fictional things, or like I listened to a couple of podcasts that are D&D, so like some narrative, improv, non-written fiction stuff I can get on board with, but it is so difficult for me to watch scripted television or scripted movies. It just doesn't hold my attention. I feel really antsy. I feel really anxious. I think some of it too is just like coming out of a liberal arts master's degree. It also just makes me hyper analytical of anything I'm watching. If you've watched any of my reviews of those Poirot movies, like I'm sure there was a time in my life I could have just enjoyed them, but I can't now. So it's not relaxing or fun for me. So that has been why reading has become my primary form of entertainment. And because it's my primary form of entertainment, it is very typical for me to read a book a day. Like a book in a day or 2. I really have gotten, like post-grad school, I'm the kind of reader where I will sit down in an evening and I just read a book. And like, I often think about them the same way many people would think about watching a movie on a weekday night. Sure, they're going to remember parts of the movie, you know, but it's not the kind of viewing experience of like, I'm going to watch this independent film and like really contemplate it. It's like, I'm going to watch this action movie because it's fun. That's the mindset I bring to the vast majority of my reading. And that's not how I used to be. Well, sorry, I've got like, again, this is very chatty, so I'm sorry if this is going to be all over the place. I'm not going to edit this very much, I don't think. So just strap in for some rambling. But because of that, I think of reading so much as like a way to entertain myself and not a deeper process where I have a lot of books going at once. I'm looking for different things from different books. I used to be like an omnivore, or not an omnivore, like that too, but like a non-monogamy with books. I used to have a ton of different books going at one time. Like I would have up to 8, 9, 10 books going, and I would just pick one up whenever I was in the mood for philosophy or for a classic or whatever. Like I would just have a bunch of books going. I wouldn't, I would remember where I was in them. I wouldn't have a problem with switching between them, and I didn't sit down and try to ever really read a book straight through. They were always, maybe the way to think of it is they were always sippers rather than shots. And I've become somebody who takes shots of books much less than like sip on a scotch of a book. So that's just been a big change in pre and post grad school of how even just like the volume of what I'm reading and the pace of what I'm reading has changed. And I think I've had a lot of like internalized judgment towards myself of like, okay, you used to be able to really just like sit with books and really just linger in them and enjoy them. And now, even for books where I'm wanting to do that, it is very hard for me to not just like, even if I'm not reading quickly per se, I don't let them linger. So like, I recently read The Groves of Academe by Mary McCarthy. That was one I didn't want to just sit and like read straight through, but like I was still sitting and like reading a few chapters of it every day before switching to something that was like lighter. And I got through it within like a week and a half or so. That didn't used to really be how I interacted with books. So I think I've had judgment of like, grad school ruined reading for you in some ways. Like in some ways it like unlocked a new way to read. For context, because, well, two things. So when you're in a liberal arts master's degree, you have so much reading you have to get done. So it's sort of almost like you have like, it's fight or flight. Like you either got to figure out how to get through all that reading or you just are going to drown. So my reading speed and ability to comprehend at speed skyrocketed during my master's degree. Like I would literally go, it got me in the habit of going to like, okay, Saturday is my day that I'm doing my readings. So I'm going to be sitting here and reading the equivalent of a book in one day across these different courses in these, like either for research or for, like the readings I needed to do. Like that's what I'm doing. I'm going into the library, all my friends who are in grad school are also here. So, it feels a little social, like, hey guys, oh, you're studying this. Okay, cool. I'll see you guys at the end of the day. Maybe we'll go to the pub and have a pint. You get in the mindset of like, this is my day where I can do my reading. So like, this is what I got to do. So, it really changed that kind of, ability to read and understand quickly. The other thing it did for me was because I ended up doing my thesis about Christian romance novels, I had to read, and I was not really a romance reader at that point. I had to get through a shit ton of romance novels to just have like a sense of the lay of the land. So at that point, my reading would be like, I read 2 romance novels today. Like I was getting through, I've never read more than the year I did that. I think I read nearly 500 books that year because I was just like churning through these books. So coming out of that, I know people think I read a lot, and I do read a lot. I'm not denying that, but like I read far less than I did at the peak of that time in my life. And the result of discovering that I could read a book in a day has made it so that I don't necessarily like not reading a book in a day. And I've had a lot of internalized judgment of that. That's kind of where all of this is leading to, is like, oh God, Mara, before all of this, like you were a connoisseur. You were a wine sommelier connoisseur of books. And now you're just doing Jell-O shots in Cancun on spring break. Like, I think that's kind of the attitude I've had towards myself. So, all that to say, I thought like, okay, let's take some time. Let's go back to the way that I used to read, which is I would pick up these really long books. I'm also infamously on record here being like, I often have problems with long books because I have critiques of the editing, and also because I'm somebody who does really enjoy the experience of being able to get through a book in a day or two. Long books are a lot more of a commitment to do that with. So, I have come to the point where I'm not somebody who loves a long book. And I was like, okay, let's go back to when that wasn't the case. Like, let's get back. Like, I'm going to have a bunch of different of these big books going at once. It's going to be great. And I single-handedly have destroyed my love of reading in a month. Like, I have finished one book in 10 days. And I do not think I could have said that. It's been nearly a decade since I would have been able to say that. I don't want to read right now. It has completely hollowed out my enjoyment of reading. So if I was looking for a result from this experiment, I do have one. Unfortunately, the result is I don't want to read right now at all. I have zero desire to read. And so I'm ending the project here because I can't keep going like this. I miss reading. Conceptually, I miss wanting to read. But I just don't write. So let's get into it. Okay. I did make progress. The other reason I was doing this is like, God, I've got to figure out a way to get some of these big books off of my TBR, and I'm just never getting to them. Let's start maybe with the DNFs. We've got 3 DNFs. We've got 2 finished books, and we have 2 books I still haven't finished. And it's been a month of this being my primary reading. I've allowed myself occasional breaks, but this has been in a month. My main reading project, I finished 2 books. So, the things I DNF'd. You've already seen me talk about this. This was a DNF. I slipped this also into my critter vlogs. This was sort of pulling double duty. So yeah, I DNF'd this. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't for me. I found the writing incredibly dull and dry. Other people do not feel that way. So I DNF'd this. So these are 2 that have been on my rambly. That's the nature of this video. I also wanted to do some of these books that have been on my TBR for like a decade in some cases or more. I got both of these from Borders when I worked there, which was when I was in college. That would have been in the mid-aughts. So both of these were history books that I kept being like, I am interested in this topic. I do want to read a book about this topic. So that's why I picked them. But for 2 different reasons, I'm DNFing. This one, I'm DNFing and unhauling. It is, so back in my youth, one of my history interests was the history of Britain and the history of France. And I was like, oh great, this is going to be a book about like the origins of their hatred of each other, their antipathy. And so I was like, okay, great, I gotta get to this. Somewhere along the way, I forgot the fact, or maybe never clocked the fact, that this starts like in let's see here. Yeah, 1688. This is after the Restoration. Like, give me a break. We're not starting with Guillaume le Conquérant. Like, we're not getting to the origins here, baby. Like, I love medieval history so much. I thought that's what this was going to be, of like all of the different, like, I'm the Duke of Normandy. No, I am. Like, that's my land. No, it's mine. Like, I thought that was going to be the vibe. That was not the vibe. We're starting way too late. Honestly, to the point of the story that I just don't even care about in the history of these 2 countries. So, no. This is just not what I thought it was, and therefore I'm sure it would be fine if I finished it, but it just wasn't, it's not what I wanted from this kind of book. So, easy DNF, easy unhaul. Great that I've been carrying that around for 15 years and all of the times I've moved. Love that for me. Okay. Decline in the Fall of the British Aristocracy. This was published in the early 90s, and I got to like chapter 3, which is page 90. I think I am just, with the state of the world and my feelings right now about empire and the forms of imperialism that linger on through today, I think I'm just not in a place to receive what are interesting bits of history in this. I just am like, all you fucking rich people, I don't care. You made your wealth off the back of... Anyway. So I'm just not in a place to read this right now. And there's very interesting information here. I am going to hold on to this as a reference, because, if and when I ever have like a question about what was going on with the aristocracy in 1920s, because I want to get some perspective on what's happening in an Agatha Christie novel, like I might pull this back out. So I'm going to keep this, I'm moving this from the TBR to my pool of reference books, was the fate of this one. So those were too early. Well, all three of those were towards the beginning of this. So I had a lot of DNFs at the beginning. Then I did finish one. That was kind of my next one. And this I'm going to talk more about in a video I'll do sometime soon about my series, Read It or Unhaul It project I've had going, because this is also a part of that. I liked but didn't love this, and it did, between this and a couple of other fantasy books I've read recently, it did give me some perspective on like where I am with fantasy, high fantasy these days, and it was similarly depressing to realize like, yeah, this is a 4-star book, it was good, I don't want to continue in the series, this is not the kind of book for me because it is so plot and machinations driven, and I just wasn't connecting with the characters, which is often what I want in a fantasy book of this length. So it was a good book. I'm not mad I read it, but am I annoyed that I spent so much time getting through it? Yeah, because like I used like some audio from the library, like I got through it, but having to draw it out made me like it less. I think I would have probably been less annoyed by it if I had just like gotten through it quickly, but that wasn't what I was trying to do. So like I enjoyed it, but like at the end of it, I'm like, okay, well, but I'm not going to continue in this series, and I'm not going to remember much about it in a couple of years. This is, by the way, this isn't a bad book. I'll talk about it in the series thing, but it just wasn't for me in terms of like loving it and wanting to keep going. So I was just kind of in an annoyed place. And at this point, like, because I'm trying to like space it out and trying to make that the main project, I'm also at the same time starting to read fewer and fewer books alongside of this. Then I got to the point where the 3 I had going are all 3 books I like / love. None of these are bad books. The one I finished is a problem from hell, and I'm giving this 5 stars. Like, it's not that I didn't like this book, but this book in particular, because it's about the history of genocide over the last 100 years, it is so grim, it is so tough. I could only get myself to do it in little chunks because it was so depressing and sad and just like gave me so much to deconstruct and unpack. And it's a 600-page book, and it just took I don't know. It just took a long time to get through this, and it was so emotionally taxing because I didn't have any of my like palate cleansing things going on in the background to like help me get through it. So this was depressing as hell and very hard to get through, but I do give it 5 stars. It's great. It's just hard. And then these 2 books, like, this is where my reading basically ground to a halt, and I've barely read anything for a week. Because, yes, this is a fascinating history of ballet. I'm a chunk of the way through. Where am I? I think we're about to start talking about The Communist, I think, was where we left off. Left Behind, Communism Ballet from Stalin to Brezhnev. So, like, so interesting. I'm enjoying this, but I just don't... It being so drawn out, and I've been reading this for, like, more than a year now, it's just not helping me want to get to it. And this is when I really probably should just sit down and like finish the rest of it. I should pick a Saturday but I just haven't been doing that. And then this is my audio right now, and I never go to this audio. Not because it's bad. This is a very good urban fantasy-y kind of fantasy novel, but like, how far am I in? I'm about half-ish way, a little more, and I just I don't want to do it. In the evening, I just want to knit and watch Dimension 20. So that's what I've mostly been doing instead of putting on the audio because I have nothing to break it up with and it's going on. So anyway, this was a failure of an experiment in the sense of I apparently made a very big mistake in trying to do this because I just don't want to read now because I have nothing breaking it up. Like the theory is you have multiple things going so that you can go to, but I just feel like I have no momentum in anything. I feel like I can't focus and like really remember everything from the last time. Like, I don't know, man. Like, this has just been it just hasn't worked for me. So I think, it's a failure in the sense of like, I have murdered my desire to read. And I don't know how long it's going to take me to get back into it. I'm going to give myself like a couple of days to just do some rereading of like light, fluffy things to kind of just get the engines going back again. I reread a Honey Phillips last night and it was like, oh man, I finished this in like 2 hours. This was amazing. Because it was a reread and because they're already light. But, so I think that's probably what I'll do for a few days and then we'll see. But like my takeaway from this is I officially have zero nostalgia left for the way that I used to read. Maybe it was a better way to read things. It was a different way to read things, I guess. But it's one that doesn't work for my brain in 2024 at all. Like at all. So I think my takeaway is I'm going to be far more selective about long books coming onto my TBR. I think my other takeaway is I just need to accept that I'm a Jell-O shot girly and not a wine connoisseur. Like, that's just the reality. So, like, I should focus on books that can kind of fit that style of reading better. Audiobooks, I think, for nonfiction still is the way to go for me, but it shouldn't be, like, the only thing I'm reading. It needs to be, like, in the mix. Because a lot of the nonfiction I like to read are about very heavy topics. So, like, that works. Audiobooks work well for me for nonfiction, and they should be a mix-in. They should not be my primary thing I'm reading. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where I'm at with all of it. It's hard for me to let go of the judgment. I feel that that's kind of where I'm at. Which is weird, because if this was anybody else talking to me about it, I'd be like, reading anything is great. You should do what works for you. Like, if I was talking to a friend, that's not how I would feel about it. But I think when it comes to yourself, I think you just have like harsher feelings about what you should or shouldn't be doing. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just kind of the unsatisfactory conclusion of this, is just that I want to be somebody who can sip books, but it just doesn't work for how my brain consumes books at this point. It just doesn't. And that's okay. Like, I know that's okay. But yeah, so the next time somebody comes at me saying you read too much, or, why do you even bother reading if you're not remembering it or whatever, I'm just going to say, I don't know what to tell you. My option is to read nothing or to read a lot. Like, apparently those are my two modes. So yeah, there you go. I don't know if this was interesting or helpful or whatever. This is a ramble, and also just, I guess, an expectation setting of like, I don't know what's going to happen for the rest of April, much less May. In terms of my reading, I hope I can get some of my reading mojo back, but as of right now, I think, like I said, I finished one book in 10 days, and yeah. Yep. Okay, so wish me luck trying to recover my enjoyment in reading. And yeah, I guess, like, if you've made it this far into this rambly ass introspection heavy video, would love to hear your thoughts about, like, how this does or doesn't match up with your reading experience or your reading process. I guess that's where I'm leaving you. I do have an idea. I think I'm supposed to do a different video next week, but I just don't think I don't think I'm gonna have the mustard for it. So I think what I might do this week is do another try chapter challenge, not to finish the books, but just literally I have a bunch of books. Like I am a part of this TBR read down, which this is also sort of a part of. Part of the process is like understanding how to be better about bringing things into my TBR. And one thing I've definitely noticed across the board is like, I need to start trying chapters more before I buy things if they're sort of an unknown quantity. So I am getting better about that in terms of like new books coming in. But I do still have some books that are already on my TBR that I think I need to try the chapter just to see if they should stay on the TBR or go. So I might do that this week, and that might be a good like palette cleanse refresh of, you know, clearing some space and also like reading some things quickly. That might be a good idea. So maybe that'll be the next video. Anyway, ramble coming to a close. If you like the video, like it. I don't know why you would, but if you did like it, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to, all that stuff. I'm barely on social media these days, but mostly on Goodreads or Ravelry, sometimes Instagram, and books like Whoa and all those things. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you are having an absolutely lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!